Hi, shalom friends, and happy Hanukkah. I'm sure you've heard the statement, it's the small things in life that count. Let me tell you what that means. You're planning the perfect picnic barbecue, okay? So you got the condiments, every type. You have the burgers, you have the buns, you have the hot dogs. You reserved the place, the weather is perfect, you have every beverage, you didn't forget the ice. I mean, what could go wrong, right? You're out there, it's perfect. Everyone's having a great time. And then you realize we forgot the napkins. Yeah. When you're standing there with your bun and there's mustard running down your face, you really need a napkin. And suddenly that small little thing, absolutely, in terms of the bigger picture, what's a piece of paper? But these things, when you need it, it becomes very, very important. Sometimes, to make a very big separation, that was just an intro, but to make a big separation, sometimes when we think about holidays, we think about the big parts of the holiday, but we forget some of the smaller parts, which almost seem incidental, but they're not. They're actually crucial. So let's take Hanukkah. Hanukkah has two components. I won't be lengthy. We have a physical component and a spiritual component. The physical component, Jews are living in Judea. There is a king whose name is Antiochus. The empire is the Syrian Greeks, and suddenly he decides that he wants to persecute the Judeans or the Hebrews. So he gives exorbitant taxes, treats them not like second-class citizens, but like citizens who have no rights. In fact, they're not even citizens, and takes liberties. And the women are not protected. Sadly, he takes a lot of liberties and tells his soldiers they're free for all. Terrible. So the good news is the Jews revolt, and there's a brand of brave soldiers. Interesting enough, spiritual warriors, but now they become physical warriors. They're called the Maccabees, and they actually have self-sacrifice, and over a couple of months and years, they actually are victorious. The 25th day of Kislev, the last of the Syrian Greek soldiers runs away from the Temple Mount, and they capture the holiest place on earth. They recapture it for Judaism. Yay! Let's celebrate. That's the physical component. And then we have the spiritual component. The Jews are living in their land, and this terrible Greek Syrian king insists that they should stop practicing their distinctive way of life. No kosher, no Shabbos, no circumcision, and in the ultimate act of chutzpah, of audacity, in the holy temple, he leaves it standing, because after all, the Greeks appreciated nice structures, beautiful architecture. But what does he do? In the house, which is dedicated to the service of the one invisible true God, he brings in images, and they offer pigs to the god Zeus, and it's horrible. And the Jewish people, during this revolution, regain the purity of the temple, and they find some oil which they light. God, in an act of grace, makes it miraculously burn, and we have the victory of the pure over the impure, and the unrighteous, the wicked, in the hands of the righteous. And the Jewish people go back to studying their Torah, doing their mitzvahs, practicing their religion proudly without interference, and we eat latkes for 8 days. Okay, we have a beautiful holiday. I left out tons of details, but I'm sure you could Google it, read it, maybe you know it, study it. What did I leave out that's small but really crucial? All right, so let me go back to the prayer of Al Hanisim. The sages instituted a prayer to recall some of these great miracles. And it goes something along these lines. And after the few were able to be victorious over the many, and the weak over the strong, and I'll add, the untrained against the trained, they came to the Temple Mount, they cleansed the temple, and looked for the oil to light the menorah. Cleansed the house. Stop. take a step back and think to yourself. We're talking about people that have been fighting literally for years. This is not the type of a war which was miraculous, where Jews did not die. Jews died. In fact, the 2 Maccabees of the 5 sons actually died in the first battle. The famous Judah the Maccabee and the famous Elazar, his brother, was crushed by an elephant falling on him. It was a bloody war. And these spiritual warriors were physically brave. They were exhausted. So they fought, and they get back the holiest place on earth. What would you do? Well, if we won the war, what we should do is celebrate. Would you do cleanup? Physically clean, take a broom and a mop? Physically remove things that don't... didn't they have some time to rest? There's families. I think the Torah, in the way it relates this story, is telling us something very, very important. You cannot bring light into a room if the room is dirty. How can you bring spiritual light when in its proximity there's an idol? Yes, you fought, you won. Yes, you exhibited immense heroism and self-sacrifice. And absolutely, God loves you, and there's going to be an eternal holiday. We'll never go away. We will always celebrate Hanukkah, even when Mashiach comes. But the miracle of finding the oil and then lighting the oil had to be preceded by these brave warriors cleaning the temple. So on a long list of miracles and a long list of accomplishments, where does cleanup fit in? It probably wouldn't even make the list. But the sages in that prayer emphasize that they cleansed the temple. Now let's bring this back to ourselves. Many of us are into these big isms. We're saving the world, we're saving animals, we're cleaning up the environment. But how about our own homes? Do our homes represent the utopia that we want for everyone else? Are our homes physically clean and spiritually pure? We want clean water. We want clean air. How about clean water and clean air in your own home? What am I talking about? Okay, your mother makes you dinner. You come. You compliment her. Mom, what a dinner, it was so good, and she feels so good. And then what? Don't leave. Do the dishes. Clean up. You tell your kids, I want you to do well in school. And they do well in school. And they study hard for their tests. And they do their homework. And they come home with a shining report card. A+, A+. And now fix up your room. Clean your room. Ma, I got an A+. That's what you want. That's the big story. The small story is an A+ student should not live in a pigsty. You're old enough and mature enough to clean up your room. Now, I'm taking 2 frivolous examples because they're very simple. But just think to yourself. We have so much that we do, and in a very big and wonderful way. But do we do cleanup first? And I believe that's one of the lessons of Hanukkah. In fact, I would even throw perhaps, this is a perhaps. What happens if they would not have done the cleanup? They would have just said, oh, we're exhausted, and there are people that are wounded, whatever it might be, and, well, we have it, let's light the menorah. We're looking around. No oil. Well, I guess God doesn't want us to light the menorah. We'll try tomorrow. If they wouldn't have done cleanup, they wouldn't have found even the cruse of oil. In fact, the whole beautiful miracle of finding the oil was because they were cleaning the temple in a physical way, but clearly that represented as well as a spiritual way. So I want to end off by saying, Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy the latkes, brighten the world, and clean up your room. I mean much more than just physically clean your room. I mean, we have a home, which is a temple. And we want to bring in light, which is the menorah. And we do. We say prayers, we maybe invite guests, and we certainly encourage intellectual stimulation through the Torah study. But it's very hard to actually get the light if you have inappropriate literature, or if you have art, which is simply not modest. I remember hearing this from a Dr. Landis of blessed memory, who he was before he became completely observant, he saw nothing wrong in getting all kinds of art, which included women that were not dressed, but it was art. And the first time he invited the rabbi to kosher the kitchen, the rabbi was embarrassed to walk in, and it suddenly struck him. It's very hard to have a kosher kitchen if you don't have kosher walls. So this Hanukkah, when we're celebrating and happily celebrating with our family, and there's so much goodness and light and brightness, don't forget, you need a clean house, a clean room, a clean mind in order to appreciate the holy light which Hanukkah presents to us.